All right, so thank you and welcome to our bi-weekly webinar series. Basically, we take you through a couple of modules in the system, and today we're going to go through the reorder analysis. The reorder analysis is accessed by from the purchasing menu, and then you go to the quick links. And the reorder analysis is really three tools in one. It's a reporting tool, tell me where I'm short of inventory. It's a purchasing tool. Once I know what I'm short in inventory, I can generate purchase orders. And it's a planning tool. The data underlying the analysis can also be used to update your reorder points in the system. Okay, so it's those three tools together in one, and we can create both reorder analysis that looks at purchasing, but also looks at production. So the type is either a production reorder analysis, which will ultimately lead to kind of work orders, or a purchasing reorder analysis that will lead to purchase orders. Okay. Before I get going, let's kind of go through a couple of things on the item level that we want to make sure that we have populated and have a little bit of an understanding about. Okay, so the first thing is that I make sure that I have a vendor. Okay, my preferred vendor is driving the standard costs. In here, I have an opportunity to have a couple of key pieces of information that are used in the reorder analysis. One of which is the lead time. Basically, from today, how long will it take to get my product in the number of days, including weekends? Okay. Now, this is just a standard. This is just an estimate of what you think the lead time is. The reorder analysis will also go and look at history and can also give you an average lead time for a specific vendor, an item combination, or the latest lead time. But this is called the item lead time, and we can just put something, including weekends, so that would be a 2-week lead time. You can also put in these minimum orders and order increments. Basically, if your vendor says, I have a minimum of 10 units I have to order, and I order in increments of 5 after that, or increments of 10 after that. Okay. And then this is the vendor part number, which you can put in, and even though this is my internal part number, a vendor can have something completely different. And that will show up on the purchase order, and you'll be able to put that on your purchase order. Okay. And so that's that. The other thing is other couple pieces of information under the purchasing tab. You have these fields called the reorder point, reorder amount, and max quantity, and they're used also in the reorder analysis. Now, you should also be aware that you can set those same things not only in totality, so you can also set it by location, and when we run a reorder analysis filtering by location, instead of taking the global item reorder point, reorder amount, and max quantity, it looks at the location inventory reorder point, reorder amount, and max quantity. So a reorder point, if we define a reorder point, is essentially lead time demand plus safety stock. Lead time demand plus safety stock. So if we estimate that we have a 14-day lead time and we sell 2 a day on average, including weekends, and then we want a bumper of, let's say, another 6 days, so we add another 3 times 6, our reorder point should be 34. Okay. The reorder amount, now these two kind of things work together. The reorder amount is kind of the amount that you want, some people call it economic order quantity. But instead of filling out the reorder amount, instead we can fill out the max quantity. So if we fill out the reorder amount, whatever we put in here is going to be what we call the suggested amount to reorder. If, on the other hand, we just say we want the max quantity, it'll try to take us up to that max quantity when we do a purchase order, right? So if we have 10 in stock, it'll try to get us up to 50, and the reorder amount ultimately would be 40, and this reorder amount will be completely ignored. Now, if you don't want to use the max quantity, you leave it blank and you put in a reorder amount. And you can leave both of these blank because you can also edit on the fly a quantity that you want to order on the reorder analysis. But for argument's sake, I'll just put in 50 on here. Also in your assemblies, you have a similar concept called the build point, the build amount, and the max quantity. Okay, so you can definitely, and you also have, there's no vendors which each one of them have its own lead time. You have it here, the make lead time. So it kind of works in the same way. The make lead time is basically going to tell me, all said and done, it takes us 7 days to, including weekends, to make this product from the date of we issuance the work order. Okay. So we want to make sure that we have as much of that information filled out as possible. Okay. So let's just go through kind of one reorder analysis, and just a really simple one to kind of get us going. So the first, I'm going to call this reorder point. Okay, and once you set up the reorder analysis, you can rerun it anytime, and you can modify it, and you can set up different names or scenarios, like for example, reorder point 1, or maybe I want to do it a specific vendor or a specific group of items, because we'll see that in our filters we have, filters for class, for item group, and for specific vendors as well. Okay, so you might want to slice and dice your reorder points, reorder analysis for specific scenarios, maybe specific groups of items. That's why it's important that when you set up your items, you have, you try to stratify them as much as possible with the item groups, or to a lesser extent the vendors. And then we also, the QuickBooks classes, if you're using item classes in QuickBooks, that's also a decent alternative. So back to here. So we have our name. This is the time horizon. So we look forward and to demand. What is the time horizon that we should look for? We don't want, maybe you have a sales order that's dated, 3 months from now. We don't want to look at that, or you may not want to look at that. So you have the ability here to define how long you want the reorder analysis, or how far in advance you want the reorder analysis, and you really want to be as kind of match it with your billing, with your purchasing cycle. So if you're the type of company that kind of purchases once a month, then typically it would be that. On a monthly basis, you're trying to keep it, if it's weekly, week by week, if you're planning, your purchasing and production week by week, or even up to a certain amount of days, daily. So you can do that. So You want to kind of be as narrow as possible in that. Then we have the historical basis, and then we provide that information to you relative to your time horizon. And the historical basis could be rolling, meaning the month immediately preceding this time horizon, or comparative, the same time last year. Now here is where we define which locations we want. Okay, so if we want one location, it also kind of filters out so if we pick one location, remember just one location, it will use the reorder points from that specific location. Otherwise, this is used to kind of limit if you have like inventory in different places and you just want to take a look at what you have available in specific locations. That's what you would do here as well. Well, we're going to be looking at all locations, and then here again, we're talking about the lead time. We already spoke about the item lead time. I'm just going to keep it there. But as you know, we can also calculate the most recent lead time based on your receiving history, or the average lead time based on your receiving history. And if we don't find a lead time, this is the default lead time that we use. So that's kind of your demand options. And then we have kind of filtering that we do. And this is the main filter here in terms of what we're trying to get. Remember, it's also a reporting tool in addition to creating purchase orders and calculating your reorder points. So in this case, I'm going to pick, give me anything that's below the reorder point. But I also say, just tell me anything that has any demand. So that's any open work order, any open sales order. If you approved sales order, if you look at our inventory status, that column is something that is required, which is the sum of the open sales order or the approved open sales orders and the non-allocated work orders for the components. Then we have what we call deficiency. And a deficiency is basically, I have a whole bunch of sales orders or work orders in the system, and I don't have enough to satisfy demand. And that's like kind of a good just-in-time type of scenario that you might want to use. And then you have a combination of the reorder point and deficiency that takes a look at both. We already spoke about that. So I'm going to just kind of leave it here. I'm going to go to save, and it'll take a few minutes, a few seconds to calculate, depending on how long your item list is. Anytime I can come in here and I can just kind of rerun it, right? I don't even have to go in and I just rerun it like so, and it'll give me a fresh set of results. So if I change whatever, I add inventory or whatever, and I want to rerun this scenario, I'll get it. So we found immediately in this particular scenario over here, there are 3 items that are below the reorder point. Now, remember that you can always use these columns over here. So if you wanted to kind of add, some other columns, like we have the reorder point that you have in the system. All right, remember I put in 34. And if you have some history, we'll also know, I'm going to show you that later, but it's a good thing to kind of look at that. And we can also put in the max quantity in here if we wanted to, right? And the lead time, right? So you kind of get a pretty good idea of kind of the data over here. The ETA is simply today's date, which is the 3rd plus 14 days in terms of they're all the same. Okay. Now, the way we're calculating here in terms of the max quantity and the suggested is just basically taking available plus on order minus required. Okay, comparing that to the max quantity and then coming up with a suggested reorder amount. Okay, and we do that, of course, like that. Now, this is just a great reporting tool in and of itself. You can download that and go to town with that. But typically, what people will do is they'll go and either calculate the reorder points or start ordering. Okay. So as you can see here, I already have my preferred vendors. Of course, I can kind of click in here and select a vendor that if it's not available. All right. Now, I could, maybe there's there's other purchase orders out there already for these vendors that have not been approved. We can definitely add them to existing purchase orders. And we can also set the location of the purchase order that you want. Typically, it will be, the default HQ, okay? But you can set that as well. So I can add it to an existing purchase order and or set. Now here, I can also, in terms of the quantity that's going to be purchased, I can either say, you know what, just use the suggested quantities, or I can kind of overwrite each one of these quantities independently. Okay, I can overwrite each one of those quantities independently if I wanted to. Or I can just go use suggested quantity. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use suggested quantity. I can later go back and edit the PO. So if I'm going to do all of them at the same time, I'm just going to click on here. And by the way, here's the historical usage over that month. Okay, obviously, these two items are new. They probably haven't been used too much. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to check them all. And then I'm going to go to batch action here and I'm going to go create orders. Okay. So now my order has been created, and each, as you can see, because I have 3 different vendors, it created 3 separate purchase orders. And then this is just a regular purchase order that you have in order time, and you can you process it as you would see fit. Now the other part of the reorder analysis is called Recalculate Reorder Points, and this gives you kind of a tool that you can manipulate here. And this daily average is really small. I don't use this file that often, but if we're going by our calculations here, you see that's basically the daily average of 2, the lead time, the safety stock, and that's my computed now reorder. So let's say I want to change that slightly and put in 2.5. We're going to sell more, so our reorder point should be higher. Okay, the lead time may have changed. Maybe we're talking whatever, things are a little bit delayed with supply chain disruptions, etc. Lead time is now longer, so our reorder point should be greater because we want to capture. It takes longer to get to us. We want to capture that deficiency or that below the reorder point at a higher level. So the higher the reorder point, the better your chances are to catch a kind of short situation. But you don't want to make it too high. You don't want to make it too high. Okay. You want to kind of set a standard for your company and just consistently run it. Now, reorder analysis and just purchasing, as you know, is kind of quasi-art and quasi-science. The point that I'm making here is that once you have a system in place, stick to that system, a systematic approach, and over time, the systematic approach will start to work. Okay. All right. So here I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna say the reorder point. Let's say 20 days, 5 here, and the same thing with the max quantity. I could update. Let's say I want another 5 days for the max quantity. etc., etc. Okay. Now, I want to, next time I run the reorder point, I want to make sure that my items capture these new reorder points here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to update. I can update either the reorder point, max quantity, or I can just update them all at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and just update all those reorder points and reorder analysis and yada, yada, yada. And here the lead time has been increased. Our reorder point is now also altered. And so that's the way, you know, it's using the reorder analysis, we can use it to assist us in calculating those reorder points. It's a similar concept with bills of bills of material, and I want to highlight something in terms of the kind of the flow. If you have a subassembly structure and you want to create work orders, but you don't want to do like a drill down on the work order, or you don't want to do a linked work order on a sales order, because that's one by one. It's one by one. So let's say I have, that's a purchase order. Let me go back to my sales order here, which I have created a sales order and approved it for this one line item. And I could come into here dependency and create a linked PO, a linked work order. And that's good if it's a special order and you want to have tracking between the sales order and the work order, or the sales order and the purchase order. But let's say, you have, another sales order for this exact item. So I'm going to duplicate this sales order. And I'll just change the custom. Oop, that's wrong. So I'll just show you that you can, a little feature here of changing the customer. So I'll just do that. Okay. All right, so basically 2 of each, and I'll just put this one as 4. So we know that we have 6 required, 2 from the purchase order, so these two these 2 sales order are driving my requirements. I have nothing. I don't have a sales order yet, or a work order that's on order, right? So I don't have that yet. Now, just taking a look at this item over here, the bill of materials actually has a subassembly in it. Okay, so there is the subassembly. We'll take a look at our indented BOM and see that subassembly structure right here. Right, so the SA001 is a subassembly that has 2 parts in it, and then it has another part in it that just gets appended after the subassembly is built. And sometimes you want to create a lot more subassemblies as well. So really, at the end of the day, we want to create work orders for that, and that is also could be the job of the reorder analysis. So I'm going to take a look. I created a reorder analysis for work orders this time, and this time I'm going to go with my deficiency. So I'll go ahead and save that, and it'll rerun it. And we'll see in a second that we'll have 6, and because now it's suggesting 6, because I got nothing. It's a deficiency. Basically, tell me how much I need to fulfill the orders. Well, I got 6 required. I got none on order. I got none available. My make time is 7 days, so my ETA is going to be that. Again, I can go start ordering, right? Use suggested quantities and create orders. All right. So now that work order has been created. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun another. All right. So one of the things that I did do here is I filtered my group, all right, for just finished goods. So I separated out the assembly group. Really, I created 2 other groups. They're basically copies of the assembly group. One called WIP and one called finished. So I just want to look at my finished goods. I don't want to look at my sub-assemblies at this point because I just want the top level. All right, so it goes ahead. I'm going to do that. And what it should show me is that it should show me that in my bill of material, remember that I have two sub-assemblies per assembly, and I needed 6 of the top level, so that's why it's telling me I need 12. I need to create 12 a work order for 12 units for the sub-assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right. So that's that. So now I have a work order for the sub-assembly as well. All right. That goes on my work order list. Typically, I would create the sub-assembly before I start creating the final assembly. Now, you can see here I have none available of these items over here, and that's why I created a third now reorder analysis. And now that I have all the kind of all the work orders created, I have my purchasing, which goes off of, again, deficiency. It's going to do all the vendors and stuff like that. And I'm going to go ahead and rerun that. And we'll take a look. Now, it found those 2 items over here. Now the question is, why isn't P0 on, or sorry, P002 on here, right? P002 is part of this subassembly. Why is it on here? Well, the reason is because if you remember from the previous example, we created a purchase order, this one right here, for P002, which had more than enough inventory to cover our requirements. Oh, not that purchase order. Actually, let's just go to P002. So the point that I'm making here is that the system is smart enough that it's not going to duplicate your purchase orders. Okay. So we have that purchase order. The quantity is 50, right? And we only required 12, so we have plenty on PO already, coming within a certain amount of time within our horizon. It's coming in within a horizon. That's why it was not included in that final reorder analysis, number 8. All right, so that's kind of an overview. I know that it's a complex area, but I have some, open it up for some questions.
And we have our first question. What if we have more than one supplier for an item with a different lead time? Will the analysis automatically calculate based on which supplier is picked?
The analysis will go based on the default vendor. That's what it kind of looks at. But when you're creating a purchase order, you can swap out that vendor for another vendor. So it really goes on the preferred vendor. So if you know an item might have more than one vendor, one of which is always the kind of the default. And if I have another vendor, so it always looks first at the default vendor. So powerful tool. Definitely you want to take a look at that to speed up the process of creating purchase orders and work orders in a batch as opposed to creating them one at a time. And that's about it for today, unless there are any other questions.
Can you try to group items ordered by vendor to get the best pricing or shipping?
Yeah. So I could create a reorder analysis that is just for a specific vendor, right? So right here, I would filter that with the vendor, and then what you can do, it will create a purchase order, and then you can leave that purchase order there in a kind of a unsent state, and then keep on adding to it. Once it gets to a certain volume, you would mark it as approved, and then go on to the next purchase order. So remember that that when I'm looking at my purchase order and I'm ordering, no, that's the wrong one. When I'm ordering, I could add to an existing purchase order that would not be for that vendor, that would not be approved or sent. So if the order is in a kind of an unapproved situation here, right, processing, I can add it to another purchase order. Once I say it's approved or sent, it's kind of locked, and a new purchase order would be created.
And I've made some helpful notes that I'm going to email out right after this, including 2 links to using reorder analysis from our knowledge base and creating a reorder analysis. We have another question. Will there be an add to existing work order checkbox?
Jonathan. Well, we're going to make that
yeah, we're going to put in a feature request for that right now.
This comes up with some good suggestions. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. And my email is also going to include some of the definitions for the things you saw, like max quantity, reorder point,
lead time.
Yeah, lead time, the build point. Yeah, the reorder point includes the safety stock because it's daily average times lead time plus daily average times safety stock. But that formula is going to be in the email, so you don't have to memorize that right off the bat. Can a receiver be automatically generated with the PO?
Can a receiver automatically? Well, you have to receive the PO. You mean create the PO and then automatically receive it without going to receive? Is that what you're talking about, Jeff? Well, typically, you would need to go into a purchase order and Yeah, it generates. It absolutely generates, like the reorder analysis generates the purchase order, but you still have to go into the purchase order and receive it. Okay. You still have to go in. It doesn't automatically do that. It doesn't automatically do that. And this is a allotted item, so we'll just add a lot number here. Okay.
And to answer your question, Jonathan, yeah, the webinar will be available to watch as soon as it's completed on my end. I put it up at this link, and I'll be sending that out also in the email right after that, right after this. But I just put the link in chat also if you want to check through the past webinars.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I do appreciate your time today. And let us know if there's anything that we can help you about. support@ordertime.com. And if you're so inclined, give us a positive review on Order Time. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.